Okay. So last time around, we got off on the wrong foot. I wanted to just cut straight to the bad stuff. So let's analyze maybe some rare instances in which the game isn't as bad when it does work occasionally. To do that, we're going to go to Frigid Man. I believe the stage's name in the bottom left was Arctic Base. Originally, it was a water treatment facility because his original name was Subly Man, short for Sublimation Man. Oh, cool! An enemy. It's just, is he guarding something? There's got to be a secret up there. No, nope. It's placed there. I don't know, for scenery, I guess. Yeah, the thing with enemies that just jump up and down vertically like this is that they're not really a challenge. Yeah, there's a reason Mega Man enemies like this don't exist in the official games. It's because Mega Man is a ranged character. They're not posing a threat. They're not a challenge. They're just walls in your way. They're just meat walls. They're just Yeti meat walls. In Cave Story, there is a bat that exponentially moves up and down, similar to this in the very first cave, but you start off with no weapons, and you can't kill it from afar, and when you do get a weapon, the Polar Star, it has an incredibly short range, so its existence is justified, and it never shows up in any of the other levels. There is a reason, and I'm just saying there is a reason enemies like this don't exist, and that's because they're pushovers that are just in your way, and they don't pose any challenge. You can hear the shooting of a Gyro off-screen. We come across the more traditional-looking Gyros as opposed to... crap. Whoops. I fell in a... Good luck memorizing that. I'm kidding. Yeah, that's not a well-designed spike drop at all. Cutting straight to... Yeah, I said the boss was good, I didn't say the stage was good. That is exactly how not to do a spike drop. That's like the antithesis of a spike drop. It's vertically scrolling. Mega Man is slightly below the center of the screen. It could be worse. He could be at the actual bottom. Usually, you're gonna want to give the player some time to react to changing directions for spike drops. So this is why in the official games is also a console, like, it's just how the games function, but it's also the reason it works, you know, why the screens are disconnected in most frickin' spike drops. Also, making the direction change at the bottom of a screen when it's disconnected makes it a lot more fair. If you want to see a good spike drop, see the Endless Attack Dive Man-esque spike drop. That's a pretty good one, I guess, in terms of official examples. But this one, nope. Rapidly changing directions, you kind of gotta know when to hard left, hard right. You gotta know where it's like the Crystal Man letter grab, but even worse. Actually, the Crystal Man spike drop wasn't too bad, especially compared to this. Yeah, you don't really want to be frickin' giving vertical scrolling in a spike drop section, especially when you're just gonna like fall. You could fall a lot faster, I guess, but you could also fall a lot slower, and that would make the section well designed if it was open scrolling. Or put Mega Man at the top of the screen as he's falling. A lot of platformers surprisingly don't do that. But ideally you're going to want to, you know, point the camera in front of where the player is moving so they have space to see what's coming. So yeah, that's screwed up. Graphics are mostly from Euphoria this time around. They used to be Freeze Man, 7 Famicom, but most of them have been replaced. Not all. You can see some of the original page graphics right here, these pipes. All of it looks completely out of, like, jumbled together and out of place. It would have been... I actually wouldn't have minded if it was just Page's graphics, so these, and then those brick walls at the top. Classic Page. We also come across some Waveman Mist, even though it doesn't work like the original. In the original, it activated on proximity, which actually made the beginning of Waveman not too terribly designed, because it created a challenge where you had to kind of deliberately sync up the way the wave pipe missed, synced up with the Techion mace balls and the Gearies and stuff like that. We also have a Met. It has 3 HP for some reason. Not a fan of Mets having extra HP. Makes thematic sense because ice, but I don't know. We also come across a Frigid enemy, shoots horizontal projectiles, and has 15 HP for some reason. That's 3/4 of a big eye. I don't understand it. Anyway, these are just kind of in your way. There could have been a better way to implement them. Again, making them activate on proximity would have made them a bit more interesting, but even then they kind of have to be combined with something for them to, I don't know, work interestingly as a gimmick. Kind of one of those. There are some gimmicks that are a bit dependent on other factors at play. Oh yeah, this section. I guess this is a good time to talk about the water physics in this game. As aforementioned, yeah, they're bad. You kind of fall a bit more slowly, but it's otherwise the same fast jump and fall as before, except when you reach the full jump or a certain threshold, you jump a lot higher than normal. So just a full jump is multiplied, but every jump in between, and you can't do in between a full jump and the regular full jump, if that makes sense. So you have this, see, and then everything in between that. So it's kind of like you can't really. It's really hard to control your jump height underwater, which poses a problem, obviously, in Wily 2, as aforementioned. Well, mentioned by a lot of other people. So yeah, there's that. Frickin' Mega Man 2 Wily 3 spikes in the spike drop, but different spikes used everywhere else. It's kind of inconsistent. The ladders in Illusion Man, but we see different ladders at the end of it. The tiles are inconsistent all across the board. As an artist, it kind of hurts my eyes, but whatever. We're evaluating gameplay. Here's the thing you can do. Just by scrolling up. The Met is now stuck in the floor. Yeah. Again, enemies are just in your way, sometimes posing a threat, but when they do, it's usually like a horizontal projectile. It's kind of like the beginning of Buster Rod G, but a billion times over, I guess. You could do a lot worse, but this gets dull after a while. That's the most interesting gameplay aspect of a stage. These pipe foreground effects are nice, though. The fact that they continue through the whole tile set makes it so that you're not, like, as you're sliding, you're not, like, you know how sometimes foreground effects look a bit off? Here, because all of them are in the front, it actually looks nice. The pipes themselves, I mean, whatever, but you know what I mean. So yeah, you can see the hints that it was originally a water treatment facility by all the, the pipes and bricks and stuff. It was still frozen over, of course. Nico complimented that background. That is directly from frickin' Freeze Man, this thing. Demade into pseudo 8-bit. Kind of this Bubble Man water foam at the top, but I don't know, it doesn't look right. Mega Man 2 splash particles. That's kind of interesting, I guess. Yeah. Could do a lot worse in this stage. Could do a lot worse, but it's a little uninteresting otherwise. I remember seeing like Dan Root, different Daniel. His video on the Mega Man series and how it's been kind of unusually quiet for no reason recently, and then in the documentary, the mini boss is pretty good, I'd say. Let's see. Oh yeah, he showed footage of Eternal, just to show that the fans are active making fan games. But like he didn't, he couldn't figure out that like as he was playing that the bottom part is a reflective point, that the head is a weak spot. Obviously, it's kind of just an upscaled Ow-Row called a Walrus for some reason. Walrust, Frost. It does bring. You can see the bullets reflect Mega Man 1 style, which brings me to maybe another major point I should say about that's easy to demonstrate in this stage anyway. And that's the fact that also random plug Yokus for no reason. Kind of a gimmick, kind of not really. Oh yeah, shield attackers. Kind of a disappointment. Again, they're not really in your way, so you can usually kill them from afar. And they're not really positioned in such a way where you can like slide under them and stuff like that. Especially since like sub-pixels, they're not like aligned to a grid, so they'll usually be at like slightly different heights as you'll see on the screen later. But as you can see here, as I shoot it, it actually bounces at a proper 45 degrees Mega Man 2 styled, which is interesting and cool. But it didn't do that for the mini-boss. And so I think my conjecture is that bullet reflection is coded depending on the enemy that has a reflective surface. So usually the bullet will just vanish, but occasionally it'll reflect the opposite direction. And instead of that reflection being coded within the bullet itself, so you just get inconsistent directions. So here, for this particular enemy, it goes the other direction 45 degrees, but then if you shoot a Met helmet, the bullet goes forward 45 degrees, or I guess 135 degrees if we want to get technical. And then, some enemies just bullet reflect Mega Man 1 style, so it's a bit inconsistent there. This enemy also has 5 HP, which, even though it uses the Mega Man 4 sprite, there is no official shield attacker that has 5 HP, it's either 4 or 6. All Paige really needed to do was color this slightly differently to indicate that it has different health. It also moves way too fast for you to reliably like, jump over it and do sick maneuvers around it without just, like, killing it from afar. Kind of defeating the, like... Shield attackers are one of my favorite enemy types in the entirety of Mega Man, and this, obviously butchers it, but whatever. You can also see, of course, that the snow particle itself freezes when you're on the seam of a transition, so it looks static as you're transitioning, but it stays that way when you're touching the edge of the screen, as opposed to during the transition animation. So it resumes here, but it freezes here. And then it's still here, and then it vanishes, and then it's here, and then it vanishes. So, yeah, that's a thing. This is a bit of a challenge here, you kind of gotta up, and then get to a safe spot. Or, these ice cubes are obviously meltable. Yeah. There's also, you can also kind of do a rock force thing, where the bullets reflect and they can hit another enemy. As seen there. But it doesn't feel intentional because it's not introduced as a mechanic. So obviously in Rock Force, in the intro stage, it was taught as a thing you can do. In Dr. Wily's final attack, it was a mechanic with a mini-boss. In Rockman and Forte 2, there was a mini-boss that also did that. But here, there are also, all three of those shield attackers were also at like different heights from the ground, and it felt really inconsistent. So of course there's that. Not really a lot of afterthought put into the actual positions themselves. They're just there to be there. Which is kind of disappointing, but yeah. So you think, obviously, with... Oh yeah, I forgot. There are incredibly rare occasions in which enemies scroll themselves off. Or you accidentally scroll enemies off. So, I'm pretty sure there's supposed to be a Yeti up here, past the refrigerator, on the upper platform, but I guess it fell off screen into the void. Sometimes it lands on the iceberg, and other times it's, directly on the platform where it's supposed to be. But it doesn't really matter because this upper section, obviously you'd think there would be some kind of challenge, some kind of reward for taking the upper path again, because, you know, there's the issue of, hey, you have to go through almost like, you know, 21 hit points worth of bullets, while usually taking it up the ass because of how tricky the positions are here. Whoa, with a low ceiling and everything. So you'd think, you know, there'd be some kind of reward on that upper path, but once again, there is nothing there. You're much better off crossing this floaty iceberg that's barely a platform, I guess. Like an interactable platform. Does it kind of constitute, I guess, kind of a gimmick. This Yeti works differently in that it's forward and back this time around, which is something, even though you can still kind of kill it from a distance. It's a bit more of a challenge, and it's a bit more complex, but it's still kind of a... doesn't really work for Mega Man, because again, ranged character. He can do this. See how when the positions do work, they're rather dull. Oh yeah, you just, as I just showed with the fridge, the way the bullet reflects there with the fridge is that, you know, goes 135 instead of, you know, 45, well, 45, you know, in one direction instead of 45 in the opposite direction. So it, like, the bullet bounces forward, elevating itself. It's kind of, you know what I mean, it's kind of confusing. Mist, camouflages with the background. Most people are gonna bump into that. Obviously, there's no real consistency with the foreground and background light usage. That's kind of... Shovel Knight also fails in that regard. It's kind of like a... Ideally, you kind of want the foreground and background to contrast really well, and this level doesn't really do that properly either. So here I'll demonstrate the Met reflection. Yep, see? It goes in that direction now. So it depends on the enemy, which is rather strange. This position here, usually you'll just climb by it with little trouble. It's kind of just there for a surprise, I guess. Doesn't really add much. Sometimes the way the snowballs arc downward, they hit you, but most of the time they don't. It would have been cool if they were slower, but also homed in on the player, so there would be like this, I gotta dodge it, oh crap. Because the way they're positioned right now, they're kind of out of your way a bit. And here we can start to see the Rockman 7 Famicom Freeze Man tiles, which were mostly cut, some more Euphoria Cave stuff, and some more Blizzard Man stuff, and some more, I don't even know. We also come across these tellies, which have a load of inaccuracies despite using the Mega Man 2 sprite. Again, all you needed to do was recolor them or change them in such a way. So there are a multitude of errors with these things. Right off the bat, you can see that the spawn max is actually 5 this time around. They have 2 HP, and they don't properly home in on the player. Although, not to say the page can't code enemies that work this way, as seen with the Lyric Tellies. Yes, that is their actual name. Relic Lyric. You could reverse Romanize it either way. It doesn't really make a difference. I call them Lyrics. The Mega Man 5 enemy. But with the Lyric Tellies, they actually do properly home in. I think it's because these ones share the same eye with the J Tellies, and I don't know whether those are intended to not home in directly, but I'd imagine so, because they're Illusion Man Tellies, and it's kind of like an illusion. But here, it doesn't fit, and it makes no sense. They could have just used the same AI as the Lyric Tellies, but they didn't. I don't know if I already mentioned that power-ups don't despawn, but they don't. Oh yeah, and you might have also noticed that the eyes, that when the telly is turning, on the side, on its profile frame, the eyes are transparent, showing that it was actually ripped from Sprites Incorporated, which made a sprite ripping error this way, because I guess a white background and it accidentally removed the sides of the eyes. Yeah, that's a Sprites Incorporated error. There are a couple errors in Sprites Incorporated's rips that carry over into early Game Maker Studio games, so like Dr. Wily Wanders Off has these Sumatron type enemies that have green in their mouths. Well, they use a Sumatron sprite, but there is green in their mouths because Napalm Man's background, and they forgot to remove it. I don't know. You can see more 7 Famicom Freeze Man with the ladder and this part right here. But you can also see past that the brick walls, which were the original page graphics. So yeah, it's a hodgepodge of different graphics. And the ring on the Wily logo is removed for some reason. I'm not even sure. I'm kind of confused, but that was a stage. Some of the enemies were combined in interesting ways. Some of the enemies were actually interesting, even though, again, mostly just Joe types with some mets, and sometimes the gimmicks interacted with the enemies in an interesting, challenging way. But it was kind of a nothing stage. There wasn't really like any like setup or payoff or difficulty. Well, there are pits and stuff, but you know what I mean. Enemies were just there to be there. In the background, there's this part that stretches for some reason. I don't know. Kind of like Pilot Red Sun, when Pilot Red Sun's quote, when there's an error in an animation, it's distracting, but when an animation is comprised of errors, it's mesmerizing. I'm very mesmerized. Sorry. We come across Frigid! Actual Frigid. I think the original Bonobo sprite was unsurprisingly a fridge, because Bonobo likes to make a lot of rectangular enemies, and Gambit cleaned it up by adding an icy spiked head. This boss fight is really well designed. Well, really well thought out, because it's just slow enough for you to be able to dodge most of the attacks. Occasionally it does get a bit sloppy and inconsistent, but there are some signals to when he aims in a certain direction, and most of the, you'd think the spread shooting of the actual Frigid Frost would, you know, be hard to dodge, but in actuality it isn't. Pretty well designed, and his full jump is relatively easy to maneuver under. Even though he doesn't really signal what he does, he's slow enough that it feels relatively genuine. One thing that could have made the fight, one thing that could have been like a nice icing on the cake is if the weakness aimed upward, if Scorch Flame or whatever, like, aimed upward. Hey, it's a better context for Rising Fire, how about that? But, here, an alright boss, relatively easy. Can dodge most of what he does. I guess Paige just, I guess this is kind of an indication that a lot of the patterns were fine how they were. They were relatively able to be dodged, but then Paige decided to just speed them up for no reason, and that ruined a lot of the patterns. So this is kind of like an example of a fight that's still slowed down. I also love that little crying animation when he gets hit. Yeah. It's a better boss than a lot of the others. More epilepsy, I forgot to mention that. And of course the Mega Man Base 2 weapon get illustration. You can also skip the weapon get animation after all the text is shown, which is a nice bonus. I appreciate that, I guess. But yeah, every other time you beat a Robot Master, you are interrupted by a killer event, in which you have to go through a killer stage. We did not collect enough bolts to grab an E-tank, so I might have to do this a couple times over because I'm personally not that good at Ballade's fight, even though it's not terribly designed either. Foreground tiles being used as background tiles. Hey, remember Kevin's stage 45? Yeah. So, Oh yeah, that background. Using the unused Gemini Man Saturn thing, and a bunch of Starman stars kind of placed along a row at the middle section, and to animate and to give off the illusion of blinking lights, it kind of just, the background just increases or decreases alpha or brightness or something, and it looks really like awkward, like, I don't know, it's like a painted background and there's like the lights are flickering or something, like there was a power outage. I don't know, to me it doesn't look that good, but I digress. Also, these guys have astronaut helmets, but it's a black outline and a black background. It's probably Bonobo's work, and he probably didn't think things through, but I don't think it would have been hard for Paige to just modify the astronaut helmet to be white. Whatever. Again, a Captain Joe AI where it just jumps and shoots horizontally. We also come across Hammer Joe. Just want you can do this. It makes sense for the purple Hammer Joes, which are an Illusion Man stage, because, ooh, it's an illusion, but here it's kind of, I don't know. You weren't able to do this in the original, and you're not able to slide under the hammers, like in the original Mega Man 3. Although, again, you could say that's a reference to Game Boy 2, and how they didn't allow you to slide under the hammers either, I don't remember. So, I mean, I don't know. This is also one of his oh yeah, wrong direction. This is also one of his stages. I do like this meteor gimmick. It is, pretty random. It is random. Because even though, you know, like, it's a bit random which direction it's gonna split, like, they move slowly, you have time to avoid them, and, you know, parry the pieces by shooting them again. It's pretty fun, even though they're kind of placed a bit randomly and nonsensically. They could have been placed, like, a bit closer to enemies, so, like, if you miss one, it's like, oh, shit's flying everywhere. Let's see what else. Oh, yeah. The flower bed. Obviously, you don't have rush, you can't recover from that. If you fall there, you're, like, I guess even if you don't know that they're Illusion Man spikes, then you'll have to just take it up the ass and fall into a pit anyway. But, like, what if you didn't beat Illusion Man first? Then people are going to be confused as to what the hell these flowers even are, because they weren't taught to the player. Also, occasionally the splitting particles break, and then during a transition, they get stuck inside the transition walls. And Paige has defended this by saying, like, certain glitches and anomalies are references to how the official games are sometimes glitchy and animalic, to which I say, like, if you want to replicate glitches and anomalies in the NES games, actually make deliberate references to glitches and anomalies in the NES games, like specific ones. Like, I don't know, it would be crazy if there was some kind of warp gate where in a boss, like if you accidentally clip to a boss gate, you somehow go into a garbled tile set of a Wily stage or something, I don't know, which would be stupid, but, I mean, highly impractical, but no, I mean, like, 42 actually did this, with how the power-ups zip through the tile set sideways, like in 1 and sometimes 2. So that's an actual, like, it feels intentional because that's an actual thing that happens in the actual games, like, you have to deliberately implement that. Here it's just a thing that was left in, and it sometimes happens. I don't think it would be too hard to program, hey, if it's stuck in a transition wall, delete instance. But whatever. Excuses, excuses. The actual stage itself isn't too... I guess I had to move a little forward first. The actual stage itself isn't too terrible. Ballade himself could be a lot better. I think the original Ballade is one of the better Mega Man Killer patterns. This one isn't too offensive. I find it a bit cumbersome how he jumps, runs, and then dashes. Like, you don't really have a lot of time to avoid him. You don't really have a lot of time to maneuver always. I guess it just takes a lot of practice, but it's a bit hard to do because you don't have a lot of like whoa, close call. Also, sometimes when you defeat a boss and you're in midair, you'll run to the center of the screen while still in midair. So yeah, more that's not something that happened in the official games either. You can't call that a reference. Even when you say, oh yeah, here's another overlying argument I make against some of the game's stuff. Even if you defend something by calling it intentional, saying it was intentionally implemented, that doesn't inherently make it well designed or inherently make it feel intentional. It doesn't just have to be intentionally left in, because, well, you could also just intentionally leave something in out of laziness. It has to feel intentional to the player, to the recipient of the game, for it to work. And again, even when something is intentionally left in, that doesn't inherently make it like a good decision. Yeah, that'll be another running theme. We're gonna come across. I think we have time for one more. We beat the best Robot Master fight, probably out of these. I think we should also go to the best stage. And that would, of course, be Jolt, actually. It's kind of like Grenade Man in 8. Interesting sprite, though, for the Robot Master. I'll talk about that later, I guess. Here's an enemy that actually, like, here's an actual, like, fucking threat. It's actually a unique enemy type. It actually, like, oh shit, it's an actual challenge. Whoa. Makes higher jumps when it's shot at. I didn't even notice that. So here, hold on. Yeah, I just wanted to showcase that. Most people are going to stop at that upper ledge to observe these 3 electric balls. You know, it's kind of like a gimmick introduction. But then this door opens up off screen. They hear a random clicking noise, and then they're confused as to why this is going in this redirector, which goes in this, you know, yellow box input thing, which is supposed to open the door, and it's supposed to be kind of like a teaching element introduction thing, but because it can happen off screen while you're still chewing on these 3 things, it doesn't feel intentional at all. It feels like a failed teaching element. So too many things happening at once here. We have this gimmick, but we also have this gimmick that's kind of happening off screen as you're dealing with the first gimmick. Yeah. Some people are just going to be confused as to why there's a 4th electric ball and it changes direction, I guess. That will show up later on. Both will. Of course. You can see the AC 100 volts from when the stage still used Junkman tiles. And some Dynamo Man stuff in the background. Most of the other tiles are original. We also have an 8 style Joe. It, just like the 8 style Joe, it freezes when you hit the shield. There's a weird I don't know if it's an inconsistency. Sometimes when you shoot the head, I don't know if, like, the head is, like, 2 HP. If you, like, aim for the head, it dies instantly. Like, if half charged the head and died once. I don't quite understand how the Joe works. If there's, like, that's the thing with certain enemy types. I guess that's another thing with crowdsourced sprites. When you get a little creative and make like a really convoluted pattern for an enemy, well, the crowdsourced sprite isn't necessarily going to reflect how it behaves. So, hold on. So, like, it's gonna lag again. So, yeah, that's kind of an error right there. Well, not an error, just a weird thing. And yeah, like I said, the Joes often kill the flow of the stage, but I think the electric balls are kind of like like I said, this game is terrible at teaching, but most of the gimmicks in this stage are visually self-explanatory enough so that you don't really need teaching. And this is an example. You can sometimes accidentally scroll these electric balls off, like that one Yeti and Frigid. This is one platform that is convoluted and should have been taught a bit more appropriately. There should have been like a vertical section where you have to jump on this to make the platform drop, and so you could get to a lower section. You know, like going vertically downward. Because otherwise, if the player just lands on it and then instantly jumps off, they're going to think it works like a standard Gyroman platform where it falls after you land on it instead of when you jump off of it, which is a bit confusing. Let's see. This screen's delightfully jerkish. You kind of have to be fast if you want to avoid everything, and it's kind of a tricky head jump, but you can observe everything that's going on. So I kind of give it a pass, even though it's hard and annoying. It is somewhat masterable, and it's not really unfair. You can see what's going on. I'm not really a crazy fan of creation coding, which is what I nickname when you use the same sprite for a gimmick and you start using it in different manners, where, you know, now it's moving left and now it's moving down and it's moving left and then it's moving down. Like, you know, you changed how this particular version of the gimmick works. But whatever, you can see how it's working, so it's not really big of a deal. And then this is actually a nice introduction to this gimmick, because, you know, you can actually see what's going on, and you can practice with a bolt grab. I don't know why I'm doing so terribly. There we go. Sometimes you just gotta be in the rhythm. But, not too terrible. Oh yeah, I accidentally clipped into it. Apparently this lower section was originally a lot harder. I wouldn't have minded if it was originally a lot harder, because now it feels a bit too easy. This mini-boss is a bit problematic, and I say that because it's bouncing projectiles. Don't bounce at regular 45-degree angles, but the sprites look like they do bounce at standard 45-degree angles. So I would either change the sprites to be just completely circular, or make them change direction if they like accidentally move, like if they accidentally bounce sideways or something. That's all you really have to do. It's not that hard. Otherwise, leaving the sprites pointing at 45-degree angles gives the false impression that they move at solely 45 degrees. So here it's just a timing challenge. You don't actually have to move fast, and if they don't sync up, then you're dead. You know, but of course, not everyone's going to immediately know that, so that's kind of unfortunate. I'm pretty sure they move on global timers too. Yeah. I gotta rub my eye. So you can kill those from afar, but they are kind of like, they do come at you. You have a finite amount of time to kill them, so it's not too bad. Kind of like challenges like this, even if they're a bit tricky. And then here you can see what's going on in advance, and just move quickly. See, that's what this stage excels in. Dodging small projectiles like the electric ball things, probably inspired by a stage in ZX, I'd imagine. Could be from anything. But also, you know, falling platforms and, you know, basic platforming, actual platforming, jumping across things. You know, there's like challenge in that, and timing it, and strategy. And so yeah, that's why I consider this the best stage. Now we come across one of the weaker aspects. Of course, it wouldn't be an Eternal stage without some puzzle stuff going on. But, you know, how the puzzles are executed is what matters in the end. Even if it's not very Mega Man-like. Whatever. So, obviously here, you can't progress through this room without understanding how the gimmick works, and it's not too difficult to experiment and find out how it works, even if you didn't see the intro at the beginning, which was a bit weird that it could occur off screen. So yeah, you just have to aim it there. Also keep in mind that the electricity can move through floors like this particular tile. Remember that. It will prove important later. So, this would have been a cool bonus item grab challenge if we understood how the enemy works beforehand. Because here, it's kind of... Ow. Whoops. My bad. Well, we made it past the tricky parts of the stage. I don't think it'll make too much of a difference down here. Oof. Again, random med is random. I really will not understand for the life of me. Sometimes the RNG of the... Yeah, see what I mean by the... Sometimes the Joes are easily killable by the head. But the first time you see it, it's like placed high above you, so you're not really going to figure out any of that. It's just a convoluted enemy. I don't understand it for the life of me. It doesn't need to be that it doesn't need to have that complex of an AI. And the sprite does not reflect how it works. Apparently it reacts to charge shots or something. I don't even fucking know. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think you can actually reliably grab that bolt without taking damage. And depending on which count bomb you dropped from, that... Oh yeah, this is also a thing in the engine I forgot to mention that you can do. Yeah. You might not want to make that backtrackable, I'm just saying. But it does allow me to show you, hey, sometimes you could get hit unfairly depending on which count bomb you dropped from, so it's kind of unfair damage right there. Not the best way the count bombs could have been implemented. So here when I aim for the head, it doesn't actually... see what I mean by convoluted? Anyway. So here we come across the puzzle one more time. Hold on. Oh yeah, getting damaged on a ladder, just like in Game Boy 2, holds no consequence. Which, I mean, whatever. Not all the physics are like Game Boy 2, it's just kind of like an inconsistent thing. Whatever. So, you'd think like a simple shortcut, because the Joe's guarding this button, whatever, you'd think like a shortcut would be to aim this down and this sideways. Nope. The floor is blocked now. And here too. Again, what I said about contradicting rules. Like, you know, Page contradicting his own rules with how a gimmick works within the same stage. Just a few screens later. Now these specific platforms, these specific tiles, block the electricity from going through. Because that would completely, you know, screw up the puzzle, because, you know, that would be a shortcut. All you had to do to fix this would be to move this one block to the left, and this bottom arrow down here one block to the left. That way they would be out of line with these two upper arrows, and he wouldn't have to block off the section like this, because now he just changed the rules on the fly, and it feels incredibly inconsistent, and that's probably the last thing you want to do within a game. Change the rules. You set up the rules, and then you follow through with them. Otherwise, you're reshaping how the gimmick works for the sake of a very specific challenge, and that's not how you utilize gimmicks, in my opinion. I don't, maybe I'm an ignoramus, but I don't think contradicting rules is how you create challenge. The electricity goes through this tile. Oh yeah, it's in the front layer for some reason, because, you know, when you animate tiles in Game Maker, they're on different layers, and I guess it's in front of the Buster layer. Whoops. See, this is where the enemies should have been introduced. I don't know why there are boss gates in the tile set, but hey. And then we come across the lyric tellies, which are implemented adequately here, actually. They make a nice panic element after these, I forget what they're called, shock droppers or some shit like that, I guess. They would have been an interesting enemy type if... I think it's a bit unnecessary to spam a bunch in a row like this, but there is a bunch of space to observe how they work, and they're much higher off the ground, so when they land, there's a lot more time to see that they're moving downward. So this is a much more proper introduction for them, and then the bolt grab version, the bolt grab section, should have been placed later, now that you know how these work. Even though it would be unavoidable damage, it would still feel loosely more intentional. We also have more lyric tellies. It would have been interesting if there was one more. So, you see, they have 2 HP, so you could kind of use these as like, it would be kind of like a strategy where, oh, you have to be careful how you land your shots, because you can't jump on the same platform for too long. Whoop. But, so it would have been cool if there was one more lyric telly, and it would have been like a strategic kind of a thing. Otherwise, we have count bombs. Count bombs are my favorite gimmick. It's very hard to go wrong with count bombs. This stage doesn't pull them off all too adequately, but doesn't pull them off terribly either. It's, again, like Grenade Man, it's hard to screw up a count bomb. It's a basic destructible platform that can be used for other means, and that's what makes it work. Its high versatility is unmatched. But, here the tiles aren't animated. Whoops. Doesn't feel intentional because they're animated literally everywhere else. If you say that's intentional, well, it doesn't feel intentional, and that's why it doesn't work. But that's a stage. It had some fun platforming sections, actually. Even when the puzzles weren't good, by puzzle standards, the actual frickin' platforming was not too bad, I would say. Especially by Eternal standards. There were some moments here and there that I thought were actually kind of fun. Even with the janked physics and everything. You can see some of the Junkman tiles in the top right and left corners of the room. The sort of, the more grayish green. Maybe a subtle nod, I don't know. Here we come across Bright Man. Jolt Man himself. I even accidentally called him Bright Man. Oh shit. He doesn't exactly do a thing and switch sides, but his leaps are so broad that he might as well, I'd say. Isn't always like that. There are rare occasions in which he switches sides by running. That vertical attack is called Hell's Gate, and he performs it a lot more aggressively when he's on low health. You can see it's a lot of just spamming projectiles horizontally. Because you have a lot more space to avoid them than Cypher Man, which he can sometimes jump towards you, it's somewhat dodgeable, and then sometimes he just randomly turns immune, so good luck on a no-miss run. There's no... It's kind of a reference to... It's supposed to be kind of a reference to Bolt Catfish, how he's sometimes immune like that, but it just happens spontaneously, and when he does it, he shoots the electricity in multiple directions. Oh god! And even though the, Hell's Gate is sometimes fun to avoid, but in short bursts. You do have to kind of align yourself with the vertical lightning bolts while a horizontal one is chasing you on the ground. So I think if the fight was slowed down a little bit, it would be a lot more fun to fight against. It's just barely doable. I think the attack where he electrifies himself and turns immune and then shoots bullets in 2 directions is kind of unnecessary and redundant. I'm not really a fan of him randomly turning immune. Not that it's completely unfair, because it's another bullet reflection where it's Mega Man 1 styled, and so you can just... And so instead of having the bullet take extra time to go off screen, you kind of just get it instantaneously and it vanishes. I'm pretty sure, unless I have a terrible short-term memory. Anyway, that attack is slightly redundant with the attack where he just summons a single projectile horizontally, because shooting in both directions horizontally is kind of unnecessary when you're at the edge of a screen and the other horizontal projectile just instantly goes off screen. And it's the same stock sprite as well, so that move could have been cut and replaced with a different move, maybe. Maybe he could have done... No, it wouldn't really work with the physics. I was thinking like a drill bomb thing, whatever. The fight actually isn't offensive. It's not terrible. It's not really good. It's not like Frigid Man good. It's just a little below average to me. It's a bit too fast to feel like the dodging was intentional, and again, because there's no control over the RNG, sometimes you can just spam Hell's Gate, that crazy vertical move. You can just spam it like a whole bunch of times over, and sometimes that works to your advantage, sometimes it works against your advantage, and it's kind of, I don't know, not how I would balance things. As for the sprite itself, you're probably wondering, I don't know, Golden Shades, Seba, MK Fan, Ice King, Lumpy Space Princess, whatever his name is, I just call him Golden Shades because that's his YouTube name. He makes really good music. He made a couple tracks for this game, Tune and Cypher. I guess it's one of the best parts of Cypher's stage, you know, just the do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. It's relatively inoffensive to listen to, even if it's his earlier work, and his more recent stuff is way better. I don't know, he just submitted this sprite, and I guess it replaced the older Raging Bonobo sprite. You can look at dev videos if you want to see the full time, if you want to see the whole progression between the original Joltman sprite, which was by page and had a lot more personality to it. It was a bit rough around the edges and wouldn't really fit with these, but it looked... But it was visually distinct. And then there was the Raging Bonobo version, which I guess would work as a final version here, but I don't know. Freaking Brightman with crash arms and a smaller light bulb, and he's yellow. I don't know why that got implemented, and I remember a Q&A in which someone asked, are you going, please replace, like, are you gonna replace the, are you gonna go back to the Raging Bonobo version of the sprite? And Paige was like, no. And I don't know why he said that. I really don't. Like, the Raging Bonobo version, I don't think it was as good as other sprites, but it was something. It was something original. I don't know. But that does it for the second episode, second playthrough. I'll wrap it up with some check in the shop. Nope, we can't buy a second tank. Didn't think so. Yeah. And, yeah, that does it for this episode. This is Lava Man, signing off once again.